Hello felters, Labrie Rich with Pen Felt Studio here. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to make an adorable penguin family using the craft of needle felting. Before you can add any accessories, you need a penguin to work on. If you haven't already, visit my website and follow the instructions to make a basic felted penguin. Then come back here. The penguins in this family have achieved ultimate coziness. I'm going to teach you how to make earmuffs, mittens, and scarves, and then you can mix and match those techniques to make the penguins in your own style. I'm working with carded wool fiber from Harrisville Designs. I'll be felting it with two different felting needles. The shaping needle is coarse, and it works best as you're starting out building shapes. It's purple on the top. And the finishing needle is fine. It works best for smoothing and tightening the felt later on in your project. I'll indicate which needle I'm working with these symbols. Whichever needle I'm working with, I like to put it into a grip of dreams. This just makes the needle more comfortable to hold. If you don't have a grip, it's perfectly fine. You can felt with just the bare needle. The first modification or mod for your penguin is earmuffs. To make the earmuffs, I pull off a little piece of wool fiber and lay it down on my blue foam. When I'm trying to figure out the amount, I like to hold up my index finger. I want a little strip that's about that big. I take my fiber and roll it into a little ball. Then, once the ball is smooth, I rest it on the blue foam and begin stabbing the felting needle into the wool. Immediately, I can feel the needle grabbing the fibers and matting them together. As I'm starting out, I stab the earmuff a few times and then rotate it. I keep stabbing and rotating it so that I end up with a round, even shape. As I'm stabbing right now, I'm feeling the needle go through the wool and into the blue foam base. After a couple minutes of felting, I've got my earmuff to a place where it's about twice as big as I want the finished product to be. It's feeling pretty good. It's still pretty squishy, but it does kind of hold together. So now what I want to do is make another earmuff that matches this one in size. So I take the other piece of fiber and roll it up and then start to felt it just like I did the first one. I'm putting my bare needle inside my grip of dreams to make it more comfortable for me to hold. If you don't have one, that's okay. Just keep felting with the needle as you were. I've got two earmuffs that match pretty well. If you get to this point and it seems like one is way too big or way too small, I'd recommend that you go back and redo that one so you have two that are matching. To attach the earmuff, I hold it on with my pointer finger, and with the felting needle, I start to stab it through the pink earmuff color and into the penguin. I really like to position the felting needle around the perimeter of the earmuff, or almost underneath it, so you can see my needle's at an angle and it's grabbing that pink fiber and then going deeply into the penguin. I go all the way around that perimeter so that the earmuff is really firmly in place. My earmuffs are attached, but you can see that the one on the left is huge, so I'm going to use the felting needle to tighten up the left-hand side. Remember that the felting needle is always tightening and smallifying the wool, so if you have something that sticks out too much, you use the needle to make it smaller. If I needed to make one of my earmuffs bigger, I could add some more fiber on top and felt it on. My final step for the earmuffs is to tighten up the felt. I use my fine felting needle and felt all over the surface of the wool with shallow little pokes. As I'm felting, I'm watching the fiber tighten up and become velvety and smooth. Mod number 2, mittens. The mittens take just a little tiny bit of wool. Here I've got a little piece of fleece, and I've stretched the fiber out a little bit so it's airy and loose. Now I'll take my little piece of fiber and start to wrap it around the end of the flipper of the penguin. The most important part about making the mitten is to wrap the fiber tightly around the end of the flipper. That makes it much easier to felt the fiber to the flipper. So you can see I'm stretching the fiber as I'm wrapping it around and really trying to get it to conform tightly against the felt. Once I've got it tightly on there, then I use the felting needle to start to attach it. You can see I've got it tightly wrapped around and it's got this long piece coming off. That's okay, I'm going to felt that to the end of the flipper now. This can be a little bit of a tricky position to work in. I like to hold the flipper between my fingers and then rest my hand on the blue foam to hold the whole thing steady as I'm felting into the end of the mitten. My fiber is starting to get felted onto the hand, but I can see where the cuff of the mitten needs to be tightened up a little bit. So I hold my felting needle at an angle and I try to stab right into that little seam where the cuff goes around the arm. I'm going to add a little bit of white fur to the top of the mitten. So I take my white fleece and peel off a thin little strip. Then I take the strip and roll it in my fingertips to draw the fibers together. I'm trying to wrap the white fiber really tightly against the wrist area of the mitten. So sometimes I'll use the felting needle and stab it in a couple times to sort of anchor the fiber, and that way I can pull it really tightly as I wrap it around. The last part of the mitten is the thumbs. I pull off a tiny little wisp of wool and then wad it up in my fingertips. I'm resting my little wad on the blue foam and felting straight into it with the felting needle. I stab it a couple times and then try and keep sort of rolling it over so that I'm felting all sides. I pick it up, roll it in my fingertips, and then felt it some more. I'm using Pendleton wool for the scarf of my penguin because he's into heritage brands. If I use a plaid fabric, it's really easy to cut a straight line. What I like to do is just cut a strip and then bend it around the penguin and make sure it's big enough. Then I'll cut a width that I think looks good. There's no formula for how big or small to make the scarf because every penguin is a different size. I just try to make one that wraps all the way around the penguin and a width that doesn't totally overwhelm its head. Since I'm using wool fabric for my scarf, I can use the felting needle to attach it and also to manipulate it a little bit. So you can see I kind of bunched it up so it's not quite as wide on the penguin, and then I'm using the felting needle to secure it onto its body. If you're using a cotton or another type of fabric, you can use glue to attach the scarf. I'm pretty much loving this winter penguin, but I feel like it could use a little bright spot on his scarf, so I'm going to add a little ball of fiber to be a little pin right on the knot. Here's my final penguin enhanced with earmuffs, mittens, and a scarf. I hope you go forth and populate the world with cozy penguins. Gift them to everyone you love.